Hey, everybody. You're listening to the first episode of Channer, the podcast about sports, entertainment,
pop culture,
and art.
That's right.
And you're listening. First of all, let's introduce our lovely guests. Who do we have first?
My name's Chad Hoffman, and alongside me,
my name is Just Tanner 101. And we're here to guide you through this crazy thing we call pop culture, sports, entertainment, and fun art.
That's right. And this podcast is called the Channer Podcast right here. So thank you for tuning in and listening.
And Chad, why is it called the Channer Podcast?
Well, I thought of it myself, like my first initials, Chad, would go as Che, and Tanner's last name, Tanner. I thought of it fun to go together as Channer.
And that's how we got Channer. You heard that? You got the first sound of Chad's name, and you got the last two syllables of my name, and we got Channer. And that's why we're here listening to Channer.
That's right, the Channer Podcast.
The Channer Podcast with
Chad Hoffman, and alongside me,
Just Tanner 101.
Hello, Tanner.
Hello, Chad. Now, because we're the Channer Podcast, first we gotta talk about
is sports. And in today's sports world, the Detroit Red Wings just came off a win against the Nashville Predators in overtime, 5-4. Lucas Raymond got the game-winning goal for the Red Wings, and this is their first win in a while, so hopefully some good things can happen for the Detroit Red Wings.
Now, Chad, how have the Red Wings been doing before this tonight?
Well, starting off before the season, they were off to a hot start, but lately there have been some ups and downs a little bit. They lost to New Jersey, they lost to Minnesota a few nights ago, but there was one...
They keep losing.
Yeah, they've been on a losing streak.
But I know the Red Wings is always winning. What's going on right now?
They, started off on a hot streak. I just think they're getting too... ahead of themselves.
They're putting the cart before the horse, you're saying.
Exactly. Never get too ahead of yourself.
Don't count your eggs before they hatch is what they say.
That's right.
Now, and so the Red Wings are doing a little bit better tonight, it sounds like.
Yeah, they just came off a win against Nashville tonight.
Awesome. Those Predators, you gotta take them down.
Exactly.
That's
they're known as the Music City, and they're a well-known hockey team as well.
Interesting. Nashville doesn't sound like a place you'd be ice skating too much.
That doesn't seem like the hockey town. You're mostly known as the football town, the Tennessee Titans.
I heard of those Tennessee Titans. They're pretty good. Just like those East Middle School Titans, I hear.
That's right. By the way, here's a little-known fact. Tanner and I went to a middle school called East Middle School, and our logo was the East Middle School Titans.
And every day we had a certain time of the day, and that was...
Titan time!
Titan time. Titan time was a special time because that meant it was time for the Titans to hang out and just enjoy ourselves and see what's going on in the day. Just like this episode of Channer.
That's right, and Tanner and I catching you up to date and catching up with each other.
Now, we talked about a little bit of hockey, but I hear that this town, this Detroit city, I hear there's some other sports going on around here.
Oh, especially, how about them Detroit Lions?
Oh, I was hoping you'd talk about them Detroit Lions. Hashtag One Pride.
That's right, and they just won the NFC North Football Championship for their division for the first time in 30 years. Hopefully good things could come. Hopefully they can step it up come playoff time.
Holy freaking crap. You're telling me this is the first time in 30 years they've won?
Yeah, because, out of all the Detroit Lions teams, they haven't, been that good. They've only made it to the playoffs, one time. Haven't been able to make it past the first round.
Really? Hold it. Well, I'm really happy to hear that they're doing so well this year. What would you credit so much of the success to?
Well, I would have to credit the success to one man doing the job, and that's head coach Jim Campbell. Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell. Jim Campbell.
No, Jim Campbell is different. Is there a Jim Campbell?
Yeah, I think there's a Jim Campbell, but it's Dan Campbell.
Well, if Jim Campbell is listening to this, then we thank you, too, for listening to us. Because we here at Channer appreciate everyone who listens to our podcast. Because we love you. We are
Channer.
And getting back to the Detroit Lions, we're talking about Dan the Man Campbell, aren't we?
That's right, man. Like, ever since he came to Detroit, like, the first few seasons weren't that great, but this year is a whole different story for the Detroit Lions.
Really? Now, I heard that Dan has a little bit of a specific diet. What does he like eating?
I don't really keep up with his diet plan, but have you heard what he eats?
I heard that he likes to eat them kneecaps. Like Kobayashi.
Really?
Out in international waters, there's no laws out there. You can do whatever you want.
Interesting.
Yeah, but don't tell anybody.
Oh, yeah, like, you know what they always say? What's said in the room stays in the room.
Exactly, and today we are broadcasting, from the special Channer recording room studio because we only have the up-to-date, best equipment and recording environments possible for our podcast, the Channer Podcast.
That's right, Chad Hoffman alongside me.
Just Tanner 101, you know who that is. And now we're going to get back to those Lions. So they're playing who tomorrow?
They have a game tomorrow night. So there's 2 games left of the regular season. So tomorrow night they are in Dallas against the Dallas Cowboys.
The Cowboys. Rudy toot those Cowboys, partner. Take them down.
As Stephen A. Smith on SportsCenter, he always talks about the Cowboys. He always says right when he starts talking about the Cowboys, how about them Cowboys, as Tanner and I call it? How about them Lions, as Detroit fans?
Lions? Roar!
The Cowboys are a good football team. They got Ezekiel Elliott as their good running back and their quarterback, Dak Prescott, as well. So hopefully our defense could step it up. Like our pass rush defense needs to stay on a man. And also, too, like our offense, make sure to block for Jared Goff. And make sure, no any mistakes.
No mistakes. Don't let any sacks through that O-line, please.
Or no interceptions or turnovers.
Please, no interceptions or turnovers, because the last time I saw a football game where a team let up too many interceptions or turnovers, they didn't do too well, did they, Chad?
Nothing happens when you throw, an interception.
Nope. And thank God we got Jared Goff. An arm like that, we can't go wrong.
I hate all the haters say, trade Jared Goff. It's just one bad game, It's not like he's going to have bad games the rest of his career or life.
Exactly. It's a long career. Life is not a sprint. It's a marathon.
That's right. You never know what's going to come at you. It just comes at you at an instant.
It comes at you at an instant. And in an instant like that, we're changing topics just like that because we are talking about something that comes into your life and suddenly, and maybe who knows how, because we had a special night tonight and we saw a very special movie. And it was a movie that was a bit about how life comes at you fast, just like we're talking to you now.
Exactly. We just were at the movies tonight, and we just saw the movie The Iron Claw, a wrestling movie based on a real wrestling life story.
Written and directed by Sean Durkin. You know him from many other movies that are just as good.
And, one key actor in that film, you may have seen him in other films as well, and he was a big actor star, Zac Efron, who played Kevin Von Erich.
Kevin Von Erich, Zac Efron, are you talking about that High School Musical heartthrob?
That's right, I am. He was a teen heartthrob back in the High School Musical days, and now he is one big hotshot actor right now as it is.
Holy crap, what an acting role this was. Not only was it one of his greatest, but it was also one of the most emotional roles I've seen a young actor take on in his young career.
Especially not alongside him, but everyone in the film played a great job.
And Chad, that's why I love you, because you don't forget anybody. Now, this is not a movie just about Kevin Von Erich. This was a movie about David. This was a movie about Carrie. This was a movie about Mike. And this was a movie about their parents as much as everybody who was touched by their family, wasn't it, Chad?
Yeah, that's right. It basically talked about the whole family of Kevin Von Erich's family. I never knew about this family.
We should say we just watched the movie, and now we're going to talk about it, which includes spoilers. So if you have not seen The Iron Claw, written and directed by Sean Durkin, please pause the podcast right now and fast forward to another point where we'll say goodbye and we love you. But right now, we're going to get into spoilers for The Iron Claw.
There are some bits of up and downs pieces to it, some that were intense and some a bit of emotional and it was so intense.
Now, Chad, let's set the scene for the audience now, because if you've seen it, you know how this movie starts. Black and white. back in the day. And it starts with Mr. Von Erich himself in the ring, doesn't it, Chad?
That's right, and showing like his signature move, like the name of the movie title, the Iron Claw.
And he was doing it against all of his competitors because he seemed to be a pretty good wrestler in his own right at his own time. Now, the movie then just don't let me get my head of self right now, because first he had 4 sons.
He had 4 sons, but
who were alive, and he also had one that was dead, unfortunately.
Who they didn't show in the film.
They didn't show in the film because he died as a 6-year-old. We miss you very much, Jack Jr. Von Erich.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Now, unfortunately, that's not going to be the only R.I.P. of the episode, because this movie goes hard, doesn't it, Chad?
That's right, it does. It takes deep bends down the whole film.
It takes deep bends and dark twists, and you don't know what to expect. But let me tell you something. This movie, wow, does it start with some warm and good feelings, because it makes you really want to be one of the Von Erich brothers, doesn't it, Chad?
That's right, it does. It makes you want to become a wrestler as well.
It does indeed. It does. I saw it in myself, and I said, I'm going to be a wrestler one day myself. What about you, Chad?
I said to myself the same thing. Everyone like that loves wrestling and like follows up to it, wants to be a wrestler and be in the hot shot.
But you know, the best thing about this movie is that it doesn't just stop there, because then it shows that it's not that easy to be a wrestler, is it, Chad?
It all takes time, you know. They just throw some ups and down pieces to you, because you may love it, you may not love it.
It takes time, but it also takes hard work. And you can see it in this movie. This movie does a great job of showing the ins and outs, of really making it work as a wrestler career for yourself and trying to make a living at it, doesn't it, Chad?
Exactly. It's not easy. It takes like different paths down your life.
But do you have any of your favorite scenes from the movie, Chad?
I would say my favorite parts of the movie was like spending time with the family and like all the good parts, like when it showed like good times, like when they were wrestling together as a family, and then like I didn't like how everything went downhill afterwards.
True that, Chad. You and me both, because I'll agree that some of the best times of the movie, some of the best moments, some of the warmest moments were when the family was together. Early on in the film, it was a happy family. You could see the hard work that they were pushing into their kids, and the dad, was
a hard ass.
That's going to be another. We're going to put a flag into that, a conversational flag into that topic, and we'll kind of come back to that dad, because right now, I forgot what I was talking about.
We were talking about like the Iron Claw movie and about the whole movie, and like
we were talking about the Iron Claw movie, and the dad was. We can talk about the dad now.
We could talk about the dad now. He was a wrestling guy himself before he had a family.
He had a family, and he pushed them hard. What did he want for his kids? His sons.
He wanted his sons to be like him and be a wrestler like him.
To be a wrestler just like him, and not only that, to be a successful wrestler, but not only that, to be the best wrestler in the whole wide world. Right, Chad?
And make a family name for themselves.
The Von Erichs. That was the dad's plan. That was the dad's dream. And he did everything he could to achieve that dream. Did he not, Chad?
He did what he promised.
Unfortunately, sometimes to the detriment of the family themselves. Because, boy, did they go through the ringer.
That they did, man. Did they go? Those boys go through something in himself as well.
Exactly, because it starts with not only is Jack Jr. dead at 6 years old, but then the movie, after a little bit of warmness of seeing them all be a good family together for the most part, then one of the sons gets a ruptured kidney and dies.
That's right.
Very suddenly and off camera.
They didn't even show how he died. They just, like, the father told the oldest boy, Kevin Von Erich.
Zac Efron, if you're following along. Kevin Von Erich came home one day. His dad was sitting at the table, and he said, he's dead. David is dead.
He died in his hotel room in Japan of kidneys.
Ruptured kidney. It sounded like maybe in his sleep.
And they showed, like, what was going on with him before he died. Like, at Kevin Von Erich's wedding, how he was in the bathroom, and Kevin thought he was drunk and, like, partied too much, but it was a bad turn.
It was actually, he was throwing up in the toilet, throwing up
blood.
It did not look good, and we had some hints that there was going to be tragedy involved, but we were very taken aback when this death happened to us. And happened to the Von Erichs, I should say. I'm so sorry.
Spoiler alert. And then another sibling of the Von Erichs was...
He was Carrie Von Erich, and he was a track star, would you say?
Yeah,
but this was the year... Do you remember what happened that year?
No.
For the Olympics?
What happened that year?
Jimmy Carter was president, and he said that we are not going to the Olympics because we are protesting it against the USSR.
Really?
So Carrie in the movie we are led to believe the true story was intending to go to the Olympics and then was sent home because there was no Olympics for America this year.
So he wanted his son to be a wrestler like his boys.
Like all of his boys, he brought this Carrie back into the family and said, "You know what, son? You're a wrestler just like the rest of your brothers."
But one brother didn't want to be a wrestler. Mostly he was a music guy himself, and then he followed.
And that brother you're talking about is none other than Mike Von Erich himself.
He was a musician. Like, he didn't wrestle at first. He was a musician partying, and then he went to go wrestle, and then he dislocated his shoulder while in the ring, while wrestling, and he was put in a coma.
After what should have been a normal standard surgery, you heard it here first, he was put into a coma. And that was just another sad part of the Von Erich tragic story. But that wasn't even the last thing, because actually before that, Carrie, who came home, became a wrestler, was doing actually pretty good for himself, wasn't he, Chad?
That he was. He was wrestling in the family's name. He was like mostly wrestling for the family name.
The legacy. And then after his brother died, David, R.I.P. R.I.P.
R.I.P. took a gun to the head.
Not yet. That's towards the end of the movie. Spoiler alert, but you've seen the movie at this point, hopefully, so you know he died. Not to his head either, to his heart.
To his heart, yeah.
But before that, his leg, remember?
That's right, yeah.
He became the champion, the world champion.
He became the world champion, and that night, he and his brother were talking. He goes on a motorcycle ride.
Drunk. Too drunk. His brother should not have let him drive drunk. Right, Chad?
That's right. You know what they always say? Do not drink and drink. Yep, do not drink and drive.
Don't drink and drive.
And don't drive drunk.
Both of those at the same time, please. And don't drive distracted either, please.
Always make sure whenever you're driving, stay off your phone.
Exactly. So if you're listening to this in your car right now, we hope it's hands-free.
That's right.
You heard it here first from Channer, the podcast about
Chad, about sports, pop culture,
entertainment, and funny art.
That's right.
Okay, now we're back to the Von Erich story, because we're talking about Carrie, who drove his motorcycle drunk, and you expected that he's going to die, which he doesn't.
He loses a leg.
Sorry. Loses a leg. He loses a leg, and it's still not great. Still not great.
It's still not great for him. He's at a bad place in his life, and his brother tries to calm him down, and his brother Kevin says he's going to be with him, and he's like, I am not at a good place, and like he calls his dad and tells him, you need to help Carrie.
Because this is after his other brother has also killed himself.
Yeah, he took medication to help calm himself, and then everything goes downhill afterwards.
Yeah, he goes out to a field, and you're led to believe that he also dies. So that's the second R.I.P.
That was the second.
That's the third, because we had Jack Jr. first.
Yeah, Jack. That was the third. Yeah.
So we have third R.I.P. of the night. R.I.P.
Mm-hmm.
And then after Mike Von Erich kills himself, trigger warning. Sorry if we didn't say that before. We'll say that before all of this. Trigger warning: suicide ideation, and talk about it. But then. Things don't go great for Kevin Von Erich this whole time. Zac Efron is just struggling and just continuing to watch his brothers drop one by one.
He's just like trying to like get it together. Like he just can't keep doing it after his brothers keep dying, and he's not sure what to do with his life, if he wants to wrestle or be like with his wife and his kids.
Exactly. And that's truly the dilemma that he's facing, because not only is it just wrestling or his family with his wife and kids, but also wrestling with his dad. So much of it is tied to his dad, continues to be tied to his dad, and he doesn't want to, he's not ready to give it up completely, especially while Kerry, his brother, who's footless at this point, footless, but is back in the wrestling ring and is wrestling again and trying and is doing a pretty good job, it seems like, right?
Yeah, he seemed like everything was going great for him. Like, he was wrestling at big stages.
He was wrestling at big stages and really ready to take his career to the
ready
next
to take
move.
on to the new world, yeah.
But then you just see that night comes for him, and he's not. You see that not all is good in his life. That seems to be going better, and he ends up calling Zac Efron
early in the morning.
Kevin Von Erich early in the morning, and then Chad, what does he tell him?
He's like, I'm not in a good place right now, and his brother Kevin says he'll be with him and be right there.
He asks him, where are you? Because that's one of the most important parts. If your friend is in crisis, especially a suicidal crisis, they definitely need somebody with them, so please make sure somebody goes and finds them. Because what happens in this movie, nobody finds him. He hangs up before he tells where he is.
And then after the phone call, he calls his dad to, like, watch out for Kerry because he knows something's wrong and he knows something's going to happen.
And what does his dad do?
He does not do anything.
He says, Kevin, this is your problem. Figure it out yourself.
Yeah, instead of him doing it himself, he makes his sons do it for themselves.
And that does not go great, as you can imagine, because what happens, Chad?
They go back to the house. Zac Efron's Kevin Von Erich. He's going inside the house. He hears a gunshot, and then he sees Kerry dead, taking a gunshot to the heart.
Dead, just like that. You heard it here first. Played by Jeremy Allen White. Kerry Von Erich is the fourth R.I.P. of the night.
And that concludes our deaths for that movie.
Which actually wasn't as conclusive at the time, because then the dad runs over as Zac Efron is finding his dead brother. The dad runs over, and then Zac Efron starts choking him, doesn't he?
He does start choking him because he wishes he could have done something to help Kerry.
Yeah, and he says, you didn't do anything. You didn't stop this. You could have done something, and you didn't. It's a lot of anger right there, as you can imagine.
There was a lot of hate, anger, and tension going towards that dad because of how hard he was and what he didn't do and what he should have done.
To. Yeah, exactly, Chad, exactly. It was truly a heartbreaking and poignant moment. And luckily, Kevin lets up and gets off of his dad, picks his brother up, carries his brother to the dining room table, places him on the dining room table, and then we have one of the most beautifully heartbreaking what looks like a flashback then becomes afterlife.
The afterlife.
And what do you remember that scene, Chad?
I do remember that scene.
What happens in that scene?
It shows Kevin Von Erich back with his normal feet.
Not Kevin, Kerry.
Kerry. It shows Kerry. My bad, folks. Kevin, Kerry, all different K names.
Hey, lots of
similar
Ks.
too.
Hey, and they're all brothers. Think of that, crazy that. But Kerry Von Erich, he's walking out, and what his foot that he lost earlier in the movie, what happened?
Is back to normal.
Oh my God, Chad, you're telling me his foot is back on his leg?
Because it shows him in the afterlife, not in real life.
Really? And then what does he do?
He goes on a boat on a lake, and then he reunites with his three brothers, including the 6-year-old brother.
Including the little one, and they all, the four of them, right? Five of them
of them up there. Like, which
Mike,
we could...
Mike, let's list them off. Mike,
Kerry,
David, Jack Jr.
That's right.
4. R.I.P. to all of them, and they're all hugging and actually, like, having a very sweet moment.
Enjoying the perfect time together.
Unfortunately, they're all dead.
R.I.P. And talk about, like, later on in the film, like, it shows Kevin with his 2 kids.
Mm-hmm. And it flashes back to Kevin, and at this point, he has 2 kids of his own, 2 boys of his own, who are outside. This is the final scene of the movie, folks.
They were playing catch with each other in the backyard, and Kevin's watching as he mourns what it was like being a brother and having brothers.
Mm-hmm. He watches his own sons be brothers as he mourns the fact that he is no longer a brother himself.
And, like, he starts crying, and his kids are saying, "It's okay, Dad, we'll cry with you, and we'll be your brothers."
Because they say, we cry all the time. It's okay.
That part really got me.
Really got me, too. And I'll tell you, folks, here, you heard it here, folks, I was sobbing at that point. It was the waterworks for me. Wasn't it, Chad?
That it was, man.
Chad saw me crying. And Zach. Shout out Zach, who was there with us the whole time.
A.K.A. Zach Seflick.
Zach the Cowboy Seflick, baby. But, yeah, I was crying by the end of the movie a lot. So Chad saw that. But you know what Chad did? He was a good friend, and he patted me on the shoulder, and he said, it's okay. It's okay.
And being supportive and being a good friend.
Just like a good friend always is.
Always make sure whenever, like friends today, always make sure you stay with each other and be with them in times of needed.
Exactly. And that's all a friend can ask, and that's all that we can ask of each other. Because at the end of the day, we all love each other, just like the Von Erichs all loved each other themselves.
And at the end of the film, it showed like what happened to the Von Erich family, how they got inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame in 2009. And Kevin Von Erich, who's still alive to this day, has 4 children, and yet they have 13 grandchildren, which is crazy. 13
Whoa.
Grandchildren.
That's a lot of kids, and they had a great picture at the end of the movie during the credits. Do you remember that picture?
Yeah, especially with that one kid being thrown up in the air, which was
folks,
pretty cool.
If you haven't seen this picture of the actual Kevin Von Erich's actual family with all of his grandkids, you got to go check it out, because it's a great photo with one baby that's just getting flown up in the sky.
Also, too, if, like, you guys haven't seen it, and if you guys like wrestling, you got to make sure you look up the Kevin Von Erich and the whole family of the Von Erich family.
But I would say, Chad, wait until after the movie, because that's what I did, and I came in not knowing what to expect. And wow, was it a movie!
What a movie! It took place back in the early days of wrestling.
Exactly. And wow, was I happy to watch it, even if it was very emotionally roller coastery.
Especially, like, anyone who loves movies, like, today, like, if you want to see a movie, go see it yourself. And also, too, if you hear bad reviews about it, don't listen to what they think. Listen to what you think. If you want to see it yourself.
Yeah, I agree, Chad. You can see whatever you want out there, no matter what anybody else tells you.
Exactly.
Just make sure that whatever you're watching doesn't hurt anybody else or yourself. Or animals. Or plants. Or, like, creatures. Or, like, any living thing.
Exactly.
And respect boundaries.
Always respect boundaries.
Because that brings us to, well, so first we've got to rate the movie. We got to rate the movie.
You ranked it a 9.5 out of 10.
That's correct. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. I will say 0.5 right there. The only thing I wish we got a little bit more of is the mother in the family. I thought was an amazing role and had some amazing scenes, such as the moment when she has to wear the same dress to her second or third son's funeral. Very heartbreaking, but she was amazing, and I wish I got more of her character, as well as Kevin Von Erich's wife, who was a very, very good, nice wife, but felt like we didn't get as much as
attention to her
as it would have been, because it would have been very interesting coming from her perspective. Which also brings me one last thing is, what if this was a limited series? And that would have been very interesting too. But sorry, that's asking a different thing. And so it goes back to my original score of 9.5 out of 10.
And it was worth seeing, man.
And Chad, what would you give it?
I would give it the same thing, especially for a wrestling movie, a 9.5 out of 10.
Damn, that's a good wrestling movie. Sorry.
One of the best wrestling films I've seen in my life.
Amen to that. Makes you want to be a wrestler.
Makes you want to be a wrestler, and it takes place back in the early days of how wrestling started, because nowadays they take wrestling stuff pretty serious these days.
Exactly. And you really see getting down and dirty with what it was like to be a wrestler back then in the time period of when this movie was taking place, which was around when Jimmy Carter was president.
Back in like the 1970s, 1980s, took place in the 1980s.
This is our first episode, so we don't have a researcher yet. But if you are interested in being our researcher, please reach out to us and we'll see what we can do. because we don't know everything, and we know that too.
And also, too, this is a test podcast, so, we're just trying to sort things out and, see how it works from here.
Exactly. Who knows if anybody ever listens to this other than us, but we had a good time recording it, didn't we, Chad?
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. My name's Chad Hoffman, and alongside me,
Just Tanner 101, and this has been
the Tanner Podcast.
All about sports,
pop culture,
entertainment, and funny art.
Thank you for listening.
And thanks for being our friend.
We
love you.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.